Have you ever wondered what it's like to kill a man?
Good evening, friends and enemies, and welcome to Exploring Evil Reloaded. We've got a strange unsolved case for tonight, and there's a cipher involved. I'd love for one of you to crack it, so let me know what you think about it at exploringevil@gmail.com. Bring that solution on, guys. Don't forget to check out Exploring Evil on Facebook and keep an eye out for that YouTube channel. It is coming. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and now, let's explore some evil. Tonight's story is about Ricky Mccormick. Ricky Lee McCormick is born in St. Louis, Missouri on June 14, 1958, and from early childhood, family and teachers note significant cognitive and behavioral issues. He frequently isolates himself at school. He stands alone at recess and tells elaborate and strange stories. His mother, Frankie Sparks, believes he was intellectually disabled. A psychiatrist allegedly once told Ricky's family that he has a brick wall in his mind and refuses to break it, even though that doesn't really seem like something a psychiatrist would say. We're talking probably mid-70s, so it was a little bit different back then. Family members suspected schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, though no confirmed long-term treatment is documented. This is kind of a problem with our healthcare industry. You know, it's really difficult for some people to get the medication and treatment that they need, and that was kind of the case here with Ricky, I think. Teachers basically socially promoted him through the grades, even though he wasn't able to achieve at grade level. It was like, okay, well, let's try 4th grade. All right, let's see how you do in 5th grade, that sort of thing. And we still see that today with No Child Left Behind, where it does happen. He dropped out of Martin Luther King High School and was barely able to read or write. So in the 1980s and 90s, he worked menial, low-skill jobs, often overnight, like a dishwasher, floor mopper, busboy, gas station attendant, that sort of thing. And he was described as living a nocturnal lifestyle, which I like the sound of, even though I'm usually up at the butt crack of dawn. And his family members nicknamed him Vampire, because he wouldn't be awake during the day, I guess. Now, he did get disability payments due to chronic heart and lung problems, so he had a little bit of extra money coming in, but apparently he smoked heavily from a very young age, and he claimed that he consumed 20 caffeine-filled beverages a day, whether that be soda, coffee. I don't think there was a whole lot of energy drinks around back then, but basically just extreme amounts of caffeine. And he moved between addresses in the St. Louis area, but sometimes stayed with relatives. And he never married, but he fathered at least 4 children. So that's prolific. In November 1992, he was arrested for statutory rape involving a girl under 14 known to the family as Pretty Baby. He ended up fathering 2 children with her, and his public defender requested a mental health evaluation, believing that he suffered from a mental defect. He was evaluated by psychologist Dr. Michael Armour at the St. Louis State Hospital and was eventually ruled competent to stand trial. In September of 1993, he pleaded guilty, and he was sentenced to 3 years. And he served 13 months at Farmington Correctional Center, because here we give out these long sentences that sound so good in the newspaper, and, well, they serve a third to a half the time that they're sentenced to. And again, yes, released early, probably because of good behavior. And, we see this all the time, like, oh, well, this guy, yeah, he likes to, and this is not Ricky, but just in general, say a certain guy likes to kidnap young girls. Well, when he goes to prison, he's going to be surrounded by predators that are just like him, and he's not going to be able to prey on anybody. Less likely to be on drugs or alcohol in prison. So it's a little bit easier to behave when you've got 5 bubbas sitting around you staring at you instead of driving around looking for a little kid or something. So in any case, that's my rant on that. So after prison, Ricky got a graveyard shift at an Amoco station at 1401 Chateau Avenue in St. Louis, and the station was run by Yuma and Baha Bob Hamdallah, men with documented violent histories. Ricky became loosely associated with drug activity, though described as naive and easily used. He made multiple trips to Florida, so his quote-unquote girlfriend, Sandra Jones, would later tell police that she thought Ricky was transporting marijuana. They had stored drugs at their apartment, and Ricky had allegedly told her they were for Baha Bob Hamdallah. And Ricky became increasingly fearful and unsettled after his last Florida trip. So there's some signs that maybe things aren't going quite as planned, and he's a little bit more stressed out. And who knows what could have happened? I mean, when you're talking about drugs, you could have 5 people with AK-47s showing up, and you could have any number of things happen. And especially if it's a large amount, if you're going in with, I don't know, $20,000 to buy whatever amount of drugs that will purchase, these guys might just think, you know what? Fuck you. We're just going to take your money. What are you going to do? So it's a high-risk lifestyle, and it would make sense that he would be feeling a lot of stress. And we don't know what happened on this last trip, but apparently it had an effect on him. On June 15th, 1999, Ricky bought a one-way Greyhound ticket to Orlando. He stayed at Econo Lodge in room 280, and phone records showed frequent calls between Ricky, his girlfriend, and Florida contacts, and he made at least one call to the Amoco station during the trip. Back in St. Louis on June 22, 1999, Ricky walked into Barnes Jewish Hospital to the ER all by his lonesome. He complained of chest pain and shortness of breath and was admitted for observation, but they ruled out a heart attack, and he was discharged on the 24th, which would put him at basically a day and a half to 2 days in the hospital with follow-up instructions that he, of course, never completed. We see that all the time, right? Your doctor tells you, oh, well, go for a walk for 2 miles a day and cut out your dessert. And you do it for a couple days, and then you're like, I'm feeling better. I'm going back to doing this. So that's got to be frustrating for doctors. So after his discharge, he went to his Aunt Gloria, who they know as Cookie McCormick's house, for about an hour, and she described him as appearing distracted and guarded. He refuses a ride and leaves on foot, and this is the last time the family sees him alive. June 25th, 1999, Ricky entered Forest Park Hospital ER complaining of breathing trouble after mowing grass. He was diagnosed with an asthma flare-up and was officially released at 5:50 p.m., and he was believed to have spent the night in the waiting room. The next day, he called his girlfriend, Sandra Jones, about 11:30 a.m. and says he's headed to the Amoco station to eat and presumably grab 5 or 6 coffees. On June 27th, it was the last confirmed sighting of Ricky when he was seen at the Amoco gas station, and medical examiners would later conclude that he died on June 27th, that very same day. On June 30th, 1999, just a few days later, a woman driving along Route 367 near West Alton, Missouri. So there's an Alton, Missouri, which is West Alton, and then there's an Alton, Illinois, which is right across the river. So it's kind of a same thing as West Memphis and Memphis, or St. Louis and East St. Louis. But she spotted a body and called police, and deputies headed to that Highway 94 North area. They found Ricky McCormick's decomposing body face down in a cornfield. He's 20 miles from home with no car and no public transportation access. So there may be Greyhound buses that travel this route, going from one place to another, but they're not going to just stop and drop somebody off. This is a pretty rural area, even though it's really close to St. Louis, and would have been very rural at the time. So this area here in West Alton is known as a criminal dumping ground, not just for bodies, but, stolen items, cars that have been stolen and had the stereos taken out, stuff like that. Crime scene investigators soon realized that Ricky's fingertips had kind of detached due to decomposition over just a couple days here. They were able to identify Ricky by his fingerprints, even though some reports say that they had been detached due to decomposition, even though it had only been a few days. It gets really hot here and humid in the summer. I'm in St. Louis, if you guys didn't know, but that will speed up the decomposition of a body. But it's crazy that after just the max 5 days, even if he was not actually spotted at that Amoco station, we know he was at the hospital, less than 5 days before he was discovered. But apparently the advanced decomp prevented the determination of a cause of death. So they don't even know how he died. I would imagine that 4 packs of cigarettes and 20 coffees a day was a contributor if it wasn't murder. But in any case, the medical examiner ruled the death undetermined, but investigators strongly suspected foul play. No missing person report had ever been filed. No weapon, no witnesses, and no immediate motive. The case was referred to the Major Case Squad. So a Major Case Squad is going to be where multiple departments get together, or even within one department if it's big enough, like the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, where they would put many investigators on the case and try and get this knocked out with as many hands-on people as they can. So here's where it gets even more strange. Keep in mind, Ricky's parents didn't, or Ricky's mom at least, didn't think that he could even read or write at all, basically. But they found 2 handwritten notes in his pockets, and each note contained 30-plus lines of capital letters, numbers, dashes, and parentheses. The writing showed patterns, repetition, and structure. The notes were sent to the FBI's Cryptanalysis and Racketeering Records Unit, or CRRU. The FBI did confirm that the notes were not random scribbles, which makes sense because most people don't just randomly write things on a note and put them in their pocket. And the chief of the CRRU, Dan Olson, personally worked the cipher for weeks. Analysts counted characters, charted frequencies, they ran computer statistics models, they compared the content to maps, addresses, routes, and they said that they can identify a language, likely English, and there is a system present, so they can't come up with it. The cipher becomes one of CRRU's top 3 unsolved codes alongside Zodiac. So, boom. It's a big deal, right? The family learned about those notes 12 years later on the news. So, if you're an FBI agent or a detective, why waste your time showing the notes to the people that knew him best and saying, does this make any sense to you? No, let's hide it from them and work on it ourselves and not tell them about it. I don't understand why in the hell you would do that at all. Because if you showed it to his mom, she might be able to say, that's not even his handwriting. That's not him. He didn't write that. Someone stuck that in there or something like that. I just don't understand not using every resource that you have. But hey, I digress. So they originally allegedly told his family that only the ER ticket was found. And again, Mom insists Ricky could barely write his name. A cousin of Ricky says he couldn't spell anything, just scribble. And the family questioned whether Ricky wrote the notes at all. In September 2009, the FBI presented a cipher to the American Cryptogram Association. They had no breakthroughs. In March 2011, the FBI released the notes publicly. Over 7,000 public submissions flood in. The FBI created a dedicated webpage and asked the public not to call or email directly. We'll talk about the theories of the notes after a quick break. Welcome back, friends and enemies. Alright, so let's talk about some theories about these notes. One theory is that it's personal shorthand or a to-do list. Now, I make a to-do list every day, and 99% of the stuff would be able to be interpreted. Some of the little scratches, we all make and stuff like that may be difficult to deduce out of context, but you don't have to write doctor or put a period, that sort of thing. There's no words. You guys really need to look at this, and I'll put this up on the YouTube show when I put that up. So just things for him to do. Go buy a bunch of cigarettes and coffee. Go to Mom's house. Stop by Aunt's. Go mow this grass for this person, that sort of thing. And then there's other theories that it is a medical or hospital related reference. So he's writing down, I did this. This is what they tested for. These are my follow-up instructions. This is the medicine I'm supposed to get, this sort of thing. But to me, if you can barely read or write, that doesn't seem like something that you would be copying down, and especially if you really have no plans to follow it, which he apparently did not. I'm sure they told him to quit smoking and not drink 20 coffees a day. So other theories include that it was a transit route or bus schedule that he had written out in a way that he could understand. And then another theory is going to be drug-related transactions. So that would make sense. We know that he's running drugs, basically, for these people, or at least that's the commonly accepted theory. Now, these could be directions. You go to this street, you turn right, you meet at this abandoned location, you get this much money, you give them box A, or, whatever. But another interesting theory is that it was someone else's code. So he had the notes, but he was supposed to give this to whoever he was meeting. And then they would know, okay, it's this, this, and this. And then Ricky would have he would be a silent partner in this drug running operation, I guess, where if he ever had been called to testify, he would not be able to interpret the notes. There would be things that would keep him from being able to kind of make this little operation crumble, if that makes sense. There's been no interpretation ever. There's been a lot of people that think and speculate, but it's never been officially solved. So some of the suspects and leads, obviously we talked about Baha Hamdallah. He had a long history of violence and was later convicted and then acquitted in an unrelated murder. So that's one guy. That's the guy that we think he was running drugs for. Then there is the theory that it could have been Gregory Lamar Knox, who was a major drug dealer and was suspected in multiple homicides and apparently had interactions with Ricky at some point. A confidential informant claimed that Knox killed a gas station worker and dumped them near West Alton, which is where Ricky was found as well. The police surveilled both of them, and there were never any charges filed. So we don't know if they tapped their phones or just watched what they were doing. We just don't know. They surveilled both of them and could find no evidence linking or tying them to Ricky. So the cause of death remains undetermined. The notes are still unbroken. The case is unsolved more than 25 years later. The FBI maintains the cipher publicly, believing it still holds answers. And Ricky McCormick is buried in an unmarked grave at Laurel Mill Memorial Gardens. So here's the thing. I don't think that there's a ton of people working on this one. Maybe there is, but it's not the same thing as the Zodiac, because there's a really strong chance that if you crack this code 100%, you're going to find, oh, well, I was supposed to get groceries at 10 and take them to my mom's house. Or it could be, the doctor said I need to do this. And you know what I mean? So it's not quite as exciting when you know that even if it's 100% cracked, it may make zero difference in the case whatsoever. But why does this case endure? Why are we talking about this case? A likely drug runner is found dead in a field. And normally, that's not something that brings a lot of attention. So I think it's really more about this cipher, this code that he carried that keeps people involved. But there's a cognitively impaired man who was found far from his house, no clear cause of death. There was no missing person report. There's 2 cryptic notes no one can decipher. The family disputes the official narrative. The FBI insists that the cipher means something. Everything needed may exist, but the pieces won't lock together. And I would love to know what this code is, but I'm not sure that even if we figure it out, we're going to know anything more than what we knew before. The FBI has said that this is not a classic cipher, like a substitution cipher where, say, a triangle means A and a square means B, that sort of thing. We know that Ricky could not read or write conventionally, and the thought of someone intentionally creating a cipher that only they know, who can't even read or write, is very low. These are most likely phonetic shorthand notes, probably personal reminders, and in my opinion, if you read them out loud, not silently, they may be a little different than what you get if you're just trying to read it. I'm not going to try and read it for you because I don't think you want to sit through that. But look the notes up online or when it comes out on the YouTube channel and read them out loud. Just read the letters and see if you can come up with anything. That's kind of how I do word searches. Top to bottom, left to right, read it across and see if anything pops up. So there's some structural observations here. There are parentheses that he uses, and the FBI believes that every time a parentheses appears, the tone changes. So what's in parentheses could be clarifications, reminders, putting emphasis on something, or a note to self. Go to grocery store, don't forget cigarettes. Something like that. Now, one of the examples that the FBI brought up was in parentheses, it's first, so the word first, and then PRSE space on, O-N, space DE question mark. So does this mean first person of the day? This implies sequencing, not encryption. So this is more, again, all the evidence is pointing to that this is not an encrypted drug running note. It's most likely a combination of travel planning, contact attempts, money or timing notes, warnings, possibly instructions related to meeting someone, not a confession, and not a code for others. So basically, this is kind of his to-do list. And there could be evidence in there as far as like, I've got to go to First Street and collect $100. That would be evidence, but it's not encrypted. Does that make sense? Good. All right. So let's talk about some of the numbers that are in there. Some people say that it's times, amounts, stuff like that. But it could also be highways, streets, right? We have the numbers 35, 36, 61, 74, 75, 194, 45, and 1/2. So they're not random, guys. Missouri and Illinois use state routes that match these numbers exactly. And Ricky was known to move between southeast Missouri, Illinois, and even up into Iowa. So for 36, there's U.S. Route 36. 61, there's U.S. Route 61, which is a huge Mississippi River corridor. 74 and 75 are both interstates in Illinois. 35 can equal I-35, which connects Iowa, Missouri, and Texas. And 194, Missouri Route 194, this one is key. 194 runs through Pike County near areas Ricky had ties to. You can look at overlaps too, not single roads. Where do these roads intersect or run parallel? So US 61 and Missouri 194 overlap geographically. US 36 crosses Missouri east to west. I-74 crosses Illinois near Quad Cities. And I-35 goes up the north and south spine. That screams multi-state movement, friends and enemies, not local wandering. One line has been interpreted as half mile under the place. This is huge. That implies an exit, a side road, a pull-off, an access road, or rural property just off a main route, which is exactly how Route 194 and 61 behave in rural Missouri and Illinois. Why is Route 194 a smoking gun? Well, it runs near the Mississippi River. It passes rural areas, farms, and woods. There's a sparse population. It's easy to get lost or dumped. And it's rarely mentioned unless you've used it. And the note reads, 194 Woods or Wilds in CBE. So according to the FBI, other investigators, let's say, have posited that this would mean 194 would not be safe, good, or come back. And they say that feels like a warning to himself. So we have a real mystery. What do you think? So do you think the notes being solved would make a big difference in this case? Why don't you try and solve them? Run them through AI and see what they think, and let me know at exploringevil@gmail.com. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook at Exploring Evil, and look for the upcoming YouTube channel where these notes will be posted, and I'll put these on the Facebook page and stuff like that too, so you can check them out. But I really want to know what you guys think. I want to know if this case is something that you enjoyed hearing about, if you'd like to hear more like this. We will be back with more Exploring Evil Reloaded next week. And remember, friends and enemies, the shadows were always closer than you thought.